She spun around, her eyes wide in shock. In the corner of her flashlight's beam, she saw a figure, tall and shrouded in darkness. It was standing still, watching her, but there was no face, just a presence so cold that it made her chest tighten with fear. Without thinking, Lena bolted back toward the exit. But as she moved, the scraping sound grew louder, closer. It was chasing her. The whispers filled the air. They weren't speaking words now. They were screaming. Screaming warnings. Screaming that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Lena didn't dare look back. She couldn't. The only thing on her mind was escape. The darkness swallowed her. Lena's breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled through the narrow passage, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The air felt heavier now, thick with an unnatural presence that seemed to follow her every step. The scraping sound was still there, closer now, almost right behind her. She dared not look back. Every instinct told her to keep moving, to escape the unseen horror that hunted her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. What had she uncovered? What was living in this cave, in the heart of Earth? She had always known that there were ancient secrets hidden beneath the surface, but nothing had prepared her for this. The feeling of being watched, the dark whispers that seemed to come from every direction. It was as if the cave itself was alive, aware of her presence. Her team had been too scared to go any deeper, but now Lena understood why. They had no idea what they were dealing with. No one did. And now she was about to pay the price for her curiosity. The flashlight flickered again, casting wild shadows on the walls as she pushed her way through the narrow tunnel. Her pulse quickened as the scraping noise grew louder, like claws dragging over stone. The figure she had glimpsed before was following her, its presence unmistakable, closing in, its intentions unreadable. Just as she reached the edge of the cave entrance, the ground beneath her feet gave way. Lena let out a sharp cry as she fell forward, crashing into the hard floor below. Her body slid across the stone, pain shooting through her side, but she managed to stop herself just before she fell into another chasm. The figure was gone. Lena lay there, gasping for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to focus. What was that thing? What was it guarding? With great effort, she pulled herself to her feet. Her body was sore, her legs unsteady, but she couldn't stop now. Not after what she had seen. The knowledge that there was something far worse hidden in the cave, something older than any known civilization, gnawed at her. She needed to know. The truth had to be out there somewhere. Her flashlight's beam flickered again, but this time it revealed something strange. A doorway. It was partially hidden behind a pile of rubble, its surface covered in thick layers of dust. It looked old, too old, and yet there was something eerily preserved about it. The stone seemed to have been untouched by time, like it had been sealed away for millennia. Lena hesitated. The whispers were louder now. They were calling to her, urging her to turn back. But she couldn't. She had come too far. The mysteries of the world were waiting to be uncovered, and this was her moment. She took a deep breath, her fingers brushing against the cold stone of the door. As she touched it, a low hum vibrated through the air, a sound she could feel in her very bones. It was a resonance, like the door was alive, reacting to her presence. And then, a click. The door began to slowly open. Lena stepped back, her heart racing. Inside, it was darker than she could have ever imagined. The air was thick with dust and decay. But there was something else, a faint glow coming from deep within the room. She couldn't help herself. She had to know. Taking a cautious step forward, Lena entered the chamber. As she moved deeper into the room, the glow grew brighter. The walls were lined with ancient carvings, depicting scenes of warriors, gods, and strange, twisted creatures. But there was something off about them, something unsettling. The figures seemed to be watching her, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on it, a stone sphere that emitted a soft, pulsating light, Lena's fingers trembled as she reached out to touch it, the whispers in her mind growing louder, almost frantic. The moment her fingers made contact with the sphere, a shockwave of energy surged through her. She staggered backward, her vision blurring. The walls seemed to shift, and for a brief moment, the entire room felt as though it was spinning. Then, everything stopped. For a few heartbeats, all was still. The whispers faded, and the air seemed to clear. But something had changed. Lena looked down at the sphere, now glowing brighter than ever. It felt alive. It felt like it had been waiting for her. And then it clicked again. The pedestal began to sink into the floor, and as it did, a hidden compartment slid open in the wall. Inside was a small ancient scroll, its surface covered in strange symbols. Lena's hands shook as she reached for it, her fingers brushing against the edges. She carefully unrolled the scroll, and the symbols glowed faintly, as if alive. The writing was in a language she couldn't recognize, but somehow she understood the meaning. It sleeps, but when it awakens, it will bring destruction. You must never let it free. Lena's heart stopped. This was it, the warning, the truth. The scroll held the key to everything, the reason why so many ancient civilizations had fallen, why they had vanished from the earth. They hadn't just been wiped out by time. They had been erased because of what they had found here. And now, Lena knew the terrible truth. The earth was guarding something far worse than anyone could have ever imagined. Lena's hands trembled as she clutched the ancient scroll, her mind reeling from the words she had just read. It sleeps, but when it awakens, it will bring destruction. You must never let it free. The warning was clear, but its meaning was still too vague. What was it? And why had so many civilizations vanished after trying to uncover its secret? She didn't have time to process the terrifying truth. The moment she touched the scroll, the entire cavern seemed to shift, the air turning thick with an ominous pressure. The faint glow of the stone sphere had now turned into a blinding light, making it hard for Lena to see anything around her. Her body felt heavy, and her chest tightened as if something unseen was slowly drawing closer, like an invisible force wrapping around her. The walls of the chamber groaned, as if responding to the awakening of something long dormant. The ground beneath her feet shook, and Lena's heart skipped a beat. The thing she had uncovered was not just a secret, it was alive. In a sudden burst of energy, the stone pedestal rose from the floor, but it was no longer a pedestal. It had transformed, revealing a massive, glowing structure beneath the surface of the earth. The stone walls began to crack, and through the gaps, Lena could see something moving, something dark and immense. Lena took a step back, her body rigid with fear. Whatever this was, it was waking up. The energy in the air felt like it was pressing against her, threatening to crush her. She could hear the scraping noise again, this time louder, like a vast, powerful force dragging its body across the stone. It was coming from all directions. Suddenly, a deep, low growl echoed through the cavern, vibrating the walls. The sound seemed to resonate deep within her bones, as if something ancient, something primal, was awakening from a long slumber. The glow from the stone sphere flickered, its light now pulsing in time with the growl. Lena's instincts screamed at her to run, to get out of this cave before whatever was trapped here could break free. But she couldn't move. Her feet felt rooted to the floor, and her mind was clouded with fear and awe. She had uncovered something far beyond her understanding. What was it that slept here? What had these ancient civilizations been so terrified of? As the growl echoed through the chamber, the stone walls cracked even more, revealing glowing rooms that had been hidden beneath centuries of dust. The energy in the air grew heavier, like the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on her. The whispers had returned too, louder this time, almost as if they were speaking directly to her. "It awakens," the whispers said, their voices a cacophony of 1,000 lost souls. "It will destroy all. Do not let it free." The words echoed in her mind as if they were written in her very soul. Lena knew then that the destruction they spoke of wasn't just a metaphor. Whatever had been sealed away in this cavern was something that could unravel the world as they knew it. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet rumbled again, this time more violently. The stone walls seemed to shift, creating an opening in the middle of the room. Lena's eyes widened as she saw it, a figure emerging from the darkness. It wasn't just a figure. It was an ancient guardian. The being was massive, its form obscured by the darkness of the cavern. It moved with a slow, deliberate pace, its presence filling the room with a sense of power and ancient rage. It had no face, no discernible features except for glowing eyes that burned with an unsettling intensity. The air around it shimmered as if reality itself was warping to accommodate its presence. Lena couldn't breathe. The creature's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything went still. Her heart hammered in her chest. This was no myth. This was no ancient legend. The guardian of the Earth's secret had awakened. It let out a low growl, sending vibrations through the floor that seemed to shake her very soul. The chamber around her began to collapse, and the guardian's enormous arms reached toward her. It was as if it was trying to say something, its lips moving, though no words came out. Lena felt a sudden surge of energy, a pressure unlike anything she had ever experienced. The guardian's power was overwhelming, and it was clear that it wasn't just here to protect the secret, it was here to stop her from interfering. With a scream, Lena stumbled backward, but the force pushing against her grew stronger. The whispers, now frantic and urgent, echoed through the chamber. They were shouting warnings, telling her to leave, to never return. But how could she leave now? How could she walk away from the answers she had spent her whole life searching for? As she turned to run, the ground beneath her feet trembled again. The stone walls cracked, and the room began to collapse around her. The guardian's form was growing clearer now, its massive silhouette towering above her, blocking the only way out. Lena had no choice. She had to escape. The danger was real. The power of this being, this guardian, was something she couldn't comprehend. Whatever was trapped here was far worse than anyone could imagine. Her mind raced, searching for a way to stop the creature. But there was nothing. She couldn't fight it. She wasn't strong enough. The whispers screamed louder, urging her to destroy the sphere, destroy the guardian, or everything would be lost. But it was too late. The cavern was already starting to collapse, and Lena realized, with a sickening feeling, that she was trapped. The guardian's hand reached out, the air crackling with its energy. As Lena looked into its glowing eyes, she knew one thing for certain. The Earth had been hiding this for a reason. Whatever was being guarded here, whatever the guardian was protecting, was far more dangerous than she could ever comprehend. Lena's heart raced as the ground beneath her feet cracked wide open, sending plumes of dust and rock into the air. The chamber around her seemed to collapse in slow motion, the walls crumbling as the guardian's massive figure loomed closer. She barely had time to think. Every instinct told her to run, but the air was thick with fear. The whispers were louder now, becoming deafening, and the ground trembled with each step the creature took. The guardian towered over her, its presence overwhelming. Its glowing eyes locked onto Lena's, and she felt a coldness spread through her body. She stumbled back, her legs weak, her breath shallow. The beast's towering figure seemed to stretch into eternity, each movement causing the cavern walls to groan in protest. The sheer magnitude of its power made the air feel thin, suffocating. She needed to escape. There was no choice. But her body refused to move. Every muscle felt paralyzed by the weight of the guardian's gaze. It was as if the creature was seeking something deep inside her. Was it reading her thoughts? Or was it simply waiting? Her mind raced, trying to remember everything she had read about ancient guardians in the legends. The stories spoke of beings bound by an ancient curse, beings created to protect something far worse than any civilization had ever dared to uncover. But the details were hazy. Were the guardians merely protectors, Or was there a deeper, darker purpose? Then the air shifted. The whispers grew more frantic, almost as if the cave itself was coming alive, urging her to understand the danger she was facing. The guardian's lips moved, but no sound came from them. Yet Lena felt the meaning behind the silent words. The curse had begun to unravel. "You have awakened it," the whispers hissed in her mind. "The Ancient One, it is hungry, and it is unstoppable." A chill ran down her spine as the guardian's massive hands reached toward the glowing stone sphere. Its fingers grazed the sphere's surface, and suddenly the air pulsed with raw energy, like the very fabric of reality was about to rip apart. Lena's eyes widened in shock. The stone wasn't just a source of power, it was a key to unlocking the Guardian's true purpose. The Guardian wasn't simply protecting this place, it was keeping the true horror sealed away. As if the creature had read her thoughts, its massive form shifted again. It took another slow, deliberate step toward her, its eyes burning brighter with each movement. The whispers around her had become a chant, a warning repeated in dozens of voices. "Never disturb the sleeping one." Lena's breath caught in her throat. The sleeping one. Was that what the scroll had been referring to? The true force the ancient civilizations had been terrified of. The force that had destroyed them. A loud crash echoed through the cavern as a portion of the ceiling collapsed, sending chunks of rock tumbling toward Lena. She jumped back, her eyes wide with fear. She was running out of time. The cavern was collapsing, and the Guardian's power was growing stronger with every passing second. The ground trembled violently beneath her feet. The whispers were now a constant buzz in her ears, filling her mind with visions of devastation. The destruction of entire civilizations, the rise of an unstoppable force, and the fate of every soul who dared to uncover what lay beneath the Earth's surface. With every passing moment, the ancient curse seemed to come alive. Lena's head spun with the urgency to understand. Whatever was sealed away, whatever the Ancient Ones had feared, was awaking now. She had to stop it. But how? How could she possibly stop something so powerful, something that had been bound for thousands of years? The answer eluded her, just beyond her grasp. The stone pedestal began to sink into the ground, and with it, the glowing sphere was drawn toward the center of the chamber. The Guardian's gaze never left Lena. It reached out one final time, its eyes glowing brighter, its form growing darker, as if the shadows themselves were stretching to encompass everything. Lena knew then. The Guardian wasn't meant to stop her. It was meant to stop the awakening. It was the last line of defense. The only thing keeping the Earth's terrible secret from being unleashed upon the world. In a sudden burst of realization, Lena understood the final warning. The sphere, the key to the curse, had to remain sealed. If it wasn't, the force bound within the Earth would be free, and with it would come devastation beyond anything the world had ever known. But how could she possibly stop it? She wasn't strong enough to fight the Guardian. She wasn't prepared for something so immense, so ancient. Her mind raced for answers, but the cavern continued to collapse around her. A sudden thought flashed into her mind. The scroll. The scroll had given her the only clue she needed. Do not let it free. But the power of the sphere was too great. If she touched it again, she wasn't sure what would happen. The force would likely tear her apart. But if she didn't, the Guardian would surely destroy her before she could do anything. The ground shook with a violent tremor, throwing Lena off balance. She fell to her knees as the very walls seemed to close in around her. The chamber was falling apart, the ceiling buckling, the floor cracking beneath her. The sphere glowed with a bright, unearthly light, as if it knew its time had come. The whispers were no longer warnings. They were screams. Screams of the civilizations that had once been here, of the souls trapped in the curse, of the Earth itself trying to keep the darkness sealed. Lena gritted her teeth and forced herself to stand, her eyes locked onto the glowing sphere. She had to make a choice. In the end, there was no choice at all. The world was about to face a reckoning far worse than anything she could imagine, and the curse would live on, whether she survived or not. The room was collapsing around Lena. The air was thick with the scent of dust and burning stone, as the cavern itself seemed to fight against her presence, as if it were alive and trying to expel her. The ground cracked beneath her feet, sending tremors that shook her very bones. The stone walls were splintering, the ceiling buckling under the immense pressure. And through all of it, the Guardian remained, towering over her, its glowing eyes watching her every movement. It did not attack, nor did it speak. It simply waited, patient and powerful, as though it knew she could not escape its watchful gaze. Lena's heart hammered in her chest as she stumbled toward the pedestal. The sphere was still glowing brightly, pulsing with an energy so intense that she could feel it vibrating through the very floor beneath her. It beckoned her, called to her, an ancient force, more powerful than anything she had ever imagined. But she knew that touching it would mean unleashing something far worse than anything she could comprehend. She had to act quickly. The whispers had returned, louder and more frantic, as if they were pleading with her to make the right choice. The warning from the scroll rang in her ears, the words echoing like a mantra, "Do not let it free." But the ground trembled again, and Lena could see it now. The shift, the awakening. Whatever was bound beneath the earth was stirring, and the Guardian was the only thing standing between it and freedom. Lena looked back at the sphere. She could feel its power pressing against her chest, as if it were pulling her toward it, demanding that she release it. The light that pulsed from the sphere now filled the chamber, turning the walls into a blur of shapes and shadows. The weight of it was suffocating. She had to make a choice, either destroy it or keep it sealed. Her mind raced, trying to find a solution, trying to remember everything she had read about the ancient civilizations. What had they done? How had they sealed this curse away for so long? A clash of memories filled her mind, stories of sacrifice, of the Guardians, of the forgotten gods that had once ruled this land. Every civilization had warned about the same thing: never awaken what lies beneath. The Guardian's hand raised slightly, its long, twisted fingers reaching for the stone sphere. It was as if it were trying to communicate, trying to convey something to her. But Lena didn't need the Guardian's help. She had already seen the truth. She had already seen the warning etched in the ancient scroll. She couldn't let the sphere fall into the wrong hands. It was not just a weapon. It was a key to something far worse than any creature, any army, or any god. If it was freed, nothing would survive. With one final look at the Guardian, Lena stepped forward, her hand shaking as she reached for the glowing sphere. The whispers around her grew louder, like a chorus of desperate voices begging her to stop. But she could feel the weight of the ancient curse pushing against her every step. This was it. Lena's fingers brushed against the cold stone of the sphere, and as soon as she touched it, a surge of energy rippled through her body, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. It was as if the very air itself was alive, flowing through her veins, filling her mind with visions of destruction and chaos. The ground beneath her feet split wide open, and she felt the very earth itself screaming in pain. In that instant, Lena understood. The ancient civilizations hadn't just sealed this force away. They had sacrificed everything to keep it hidden. The Guardians were the last line of defense, and if the sphere was ever touched, the seal would break. The dark force, the sleeping one, would awaken, and everything would be lost. But now, the choice was in her hands. The Guardian stepped closer, its presence growing heavier, as if it too understood what was happening. It reached out with one massive arm, and for a brief moment, Lena saw a flicker of understanding in its glowing eyes. It was not just protecting the sphere, it was warning her. With a final, desperate breath, Lena pushed herself away from the sphere, her hands trembling. The energy that had surged through her began to fade, leaving her weak and exhausted, but she had to stop it. The ground continued to rumble, but this time it was different. It was as if the earth was acknowledging her choice. The walls cracked and groaned, but the glowing light of the sphere began to dim, slowly at first, then fading into nothingness. The chamber stopped shaking, the dust settled, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Lena fell to her knees, gasping for air, her body spent. She had made it. She had made the right choice. The guardian stood over her, still as a statue, its glowing eyes now dimmed. It didn't move, but it didn't need to. Lena knew the danger was far from over. The Earth's ancient curse was sealed for now, but the force she had awoken still existed, buried deep below the surface. And it would wait, waiting for the day it would be freed. Lena stood up shakily, her legs barely supporting her. She looked back at the guardian, and though it remained still, she knew it had done its job. The protector had prevented the ultimate destruction. But how long would it last? How long could the Earth hold on to its secret? As she made her way out of the crumbling cavern, Lena looked one last time at the sealed entrance. She had learned the truth, but there were still questions left unanswered. The ancient curse wasn't gone. It was just waiting for the next curious soul to come and disturb its eternal slumber. And next time, there might not be a guardian to stop it. Lena's breath came in ragged gasps as she staggered out of the crumbling cavern. The once stable earth beneath her feet now trembled with a foreboding resonance. The world outside the cave was eerily silent, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The weight of her choice, the massive responsibility that rested on her shoulders, pressed down on her chest like 1,000 tons. She glanced back at the entrance to the cave. It was still there, shrouded in darkness, the ominous presence of the guardian standing sentinel within. But even as she walked away, Lena knew the danger wasn't over. The secret she had uncovered, the ancient curse bound deep beneath the earth's surface, was still out there, hidden, waiting. Despite the immense relief she felt, there was a gnawing fear in the pit of her stomach. She had managed to prevent the destruction, for now. But she had seen the power of the sphere. The force that lay sealed beneath the earth was not just a threat. It was an inevitability. The whispers she had heard, those frantic voices that warned her of the awakening, were not just the ramblings of ancient souls. They were a warning for the future. Lena wasn't just an observer anymore. She had become part of the ancient cycle. The civilizations that had vanished before her had left behind a legacy of fear, each warning against disturbing what lay beneath. And now, Lena had joined that chain of keepers, those who had found the truth and lived to tell the tale. But what would happen to her now? What would happen to the world? Could anyone else, anyone with less wisdom or courage, uncover the same secret and undo all she had worked to protect? The path ahead was unclear. She couldn't go back to her old life. The world would never be the same, not after what she had seen, what she had uncovered. The force beneath the earth, the hidden one, was still there, locked away. But it was becoming restless. The very balance of nature seemed to be shifting, the earth's energy fluctuating. It felt as though the planet was reacting to her disturbance, as if it were aware of the monumental choice she had made. Lena didn't have all the answers, but she had learned something crucial during her time in the cavern. The civilizations that came before her had not just feared what was sealed away. They had worshipped it. They had sacrificed everything, including their existence, to keep it contained. But now the secret had been disturbed. Now the awakening had begun. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than what she had discovered. She had touched the surface, and yet the darkness she had seen was only the beginning. What if there were other forces, other guardians, watching over other ancient secrets around the world? What if they too were beginning to stir, just as the one she had encountered had done? The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the barren landscape in front of her. Lena pulled her coat tighter around her, her mind racing with the implications of everything she had learned. She had never felt so small, so powerless, in the face of something so vast, so ancient. But even as the weight of what she had uncovered threatened to crush her, Lena knew one thing for certain. The truth was out there, buried beneath the surface, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover it. And this time, there might be no one left to stop it. Lena stood at the edge of the cliff, staring out into the horizon. The sun had set, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, but the beauty of the world before her did little to comfort her. In her mind, the chaos of the ancient cavern, the whispers of long-forgotten civilizations, and the presence of the guardian haunted her thoughts. It was as if the curse had planted its seeds deep in her soul, gnawing at her from within. She couldn't shake the feeling that the world was changing, that everything she knew was unraveling. The secrets she had uncovered were not just meant to be buried. They were meant to be forgotten, hidden away where no one could find them. And yet Lena had disturbed the very balance that had kept the world from falling into ruin. Had she made a mistake? The ancient guardians, the legends, the warnings, everything pointed to the same truth. Some things were too dangerous to disturb. And Lena, with her insatiable curiosity, had broken the ancient vow to keep it hidden. She clutched the pendant that had been passed down through generations in her family. It had once been a symbol of protection, a relic from a time long past. Now it felt like nothing more than a reminder of her failure. The faintest whisper in her ear made her jump. She spun around, eyes scanning the darkening world around her. But there was nothing, just the wind howling across the empty land. Lena had grown used to the whispers in the cavern, but now they followed her, lingering in her thoughts, as if they were trying to reach her from someplace far beyond this world. "Never wake the sleeping ones," they whispered again. It was a phrase she couldn't escape, a phrase that now lived inside her, growing stronger with every passing day. Lena walked back toward her camp, her steps heavy with the weight of her decision. The world around her had been peaceful once, but now nothing felt right. The air was charged, the earth trembling beneath her feet, as if the world was about to tear itself apart. Was the guardian still watching? Was it waiting for her to make another mistake, another decision that could unlock the horror buried beneath the surface? As Lena reached her camp, she noticed something strange. A shadow moved across the landscape, too large and too fast to be natural. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The silhouette of something massive loomed just beyond the trees, something not quite human, but not entirely monstrous either. The guardian. She stepped back, her heart racing, but then she saw it, a figure no taller than herself, dressed in worn armor and a cloak that fluttered in the wind. The stranger approached her slowly, with deliberate steps that matched the rhythm of the earth beneath. "You've awoken it," the figure said, its voice deep and steady, the words chilling her to the bone. "You've broken the cycle." Lena could barely respond, her voice trapped in her throat. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come. The figure stepped closer, its presence oppressive, filling the air with an aura of ancient power.